Alright, welcome back. So today we're going to work on some more Excel exercises, and if you want to follow along you can follow along with the video, but it's better if you have the textbook, which is the Exploring Microsoft Office 2016 Volume 1. Series editor is Mary Ann Poatsy, P-O-A-T-S-Y. And we're going to start on Chapter 2. So before doing this particular assignment, you're going to want to go through the Chapter 1 exercises first, as all the exercises that we do build on the previous ones. But we are starting out on page 492, hands-on exercises. So the very first thing we're going to do is work with some formulas here we're going to create for this sheet. So we have a spreadsheet here called the Townsend Mortgage Company, and we haven't filled in yet the formulas for the amount financed, the rate per period, and the number of payment periods. So we're going to do that right now. So the very first thing I'm going to do is click in cell D8, which is right here, and I'm going to type the equal sign, and then I'm going to click cell B8. So you can see we're starting to build a formula here now. Then I'm going to press the minus or dash on the keyboard, and I'm going to select cell E8. So you can see our formula includes two numbers, B8, the cost of the house, minus C8, which is the down payment. So all I have to do now is press the enter key, or here on the formula bar I can press this checkbox, which will also enter the formula and give me the amount financed. Now of course we don't want to have to enter information directly. That's one of the reasons that we did this formula this way, so that we didn't make a mistake and enter the wrong numbers. If we had accidentally entered, for example, B9 minus C8, all of these formulas would have been wrong that we created. Okay, so I'm going to press the escape key, and I can use the fill handle here, which we've used before, but we'll look at it again. So in order to use the fill handle, I can do a couple of things. One, I have to wait until I see the black cross. So we don't want to see that white cross, and we don't want to see the four arrows. We want to see the black cross. I can grab that handle and drag it down, or if I double click the fill handle, Excel's going to make a guesstimate as to which cells I want to fill in information by looking at the adjacent information that's next to the cell we're in. So I'm going to go ahead and double click that because it's quickest, and you can see I've now filled in all of the amount financed, and I never had to enter any numbers. So if I click now on cell D9, you can see that it's already created a formula for me that is correct, so I don't have to type this formula in over and over and over, and that ensures accuracy. Okay, so I'm going to go to page 493, and I'm going to click cell F8. So I'm on column F, cell 8. And I'm going to type in the formula this time. So many times we do type in the formula. You just want to ensure if you do that, that you do type in the correct information. So I'm going to type in equals E8 divided by B5. Now notice that we're using a cell up here, B5, which gives us the payments per year. Now I'm going to press enter. So do you think I can use the fill handle here? What do you think is going to happen if I try to use the fill handle? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and double click that cross, and I'm thinking I can just go ahead and fill this in. So I do, but look what happens. So I've got a divide by zero error, I've got a value error, and I have 0% for these two. Now that can't be right, can it? Actually, it's not right, because in our formula, we said E8 equals B5. Now, when we go to the next line, look what happens. Now, the formula includes B6, which is one cell below B5. Well, that's a real problem. We don't want that, right? Because we're trying to get a divide by B5. So how can we fix that? Imagine, if you will, somebody wants to change this in the future. Well, we wouldn't want to statically enter a 12. We could, right? We could enter 12, and thereafter that formula would be correct, right? So if we use the fill handle now, the numbers come out correct. But what if somebody changes this in the future? These would not be updated. So we have to do something a little bit different. And what we're going to do, we're going to move our mouse. First, let me go back to that original formula we had. Okay. So our original formula was E8 divided by B5. Well, we want B5 to be static so that it doesn't change. But this number we need to change for every row we continue on. By the way, if you accidentally click on a formula and you begin creating a new one, see how this is active? You can always press the escape key and it will stop. So I'm going to go back up here to the formula bar and I'm going to click to the right of B5. Then I'm going to press the F4 key. Now look what's happened. So now this cell has these $ symbols in front of it. What that indicates is that this cell is now static. So it will always use B5 all the way down. So I'm going to hit the control key. I'm going to hold the control key down and press enter. When I hold the control key down and press enter, it ensures that I stay on the same cell. If I just press enter, I would go down to the next cell. So here we have it. Look at our formula. E8 equals $B $5. So now you know if you ever see the $ in front of the column and the row, you know that that cell is now static. It will not change. Okay, so let's grab the fill handle and double click. Of course, we don't see any changes in the numbers, right? Because we were experimenting with simply typing in the number 12. But let's click on one of these cells and check it out. Now, the first cell number has changed, right? Because we're on the E9 column. But the second one is static, which is this one right here. So now we have the rate per period all the way down, and we can see that, again, this particular one is static. But when we're on row 12, we definitely want to be using the correct cell, and that one does change. Alright, so I'm going to click save. If I haven't said it before, I'm going to say it now. It's very important to click save as you're working through your document, because you never know if you're going to make a mistake. And well, I shouldn't say make a mistake. The real reason that we save it is in case the computer freezes. We don't want to lose our information. Now, if you're on campus, the computers will erase everything upon reboot of the computer. So that is a real problem. At home, you will probably be able to recover the document if you need to. But when you're on campus, it's probably not going to be recoverable. And I wouldn't want you to lose all of this work. Okay? So we are on page 494, and I'm going to click cell H8. And in this one, again, I'm typing in that particular formula, G8 times B5. Okay, G8 times B5. So again, we can look at this and see that we're going to multiply the number of years by the payments per year. And you know what I'm thinking? What do we need to do? Well, we go up here and we press function, if you're on a laptop, many times in order to use the F4 key, you first have to press the FN or function key. If you're on a desktop computer, you usually do not need to do that. So I'm going to press F4. Now look what's happened. Just like with the previous column, it's ensured that this column and this particular cell or row are static. But what if I press F4 one more time? Now interesting. So there's no longer a $ in front of the B, but there is in front of the 5. So we're now saying that the cell on row 5 is important, but the column does not need to be static. What this is called is not an absolute reference, but a mixed reference. When in doubt, and I can continue pressing F4, watch what happens. So I press F4 again. Now the column B is absolute, but number 5 can change. Well, we don't want that. Now both of them can change, and I'm going to press F4 again. Now it's an absolute reference, which when in doubt is the one you want. But what would happen if we use this one? Would it work? Let's find out. We're going to press enter, and we get a number of payments periods of 300. So I'm going to go ahead and use the fill handle. I wait till I see that black cross appear on the little green dot there, and I double click. So if I go down here and click here, it's still using B5. Well, why is that? Well, the reason is, you'll notice these cells are going down. Well, we've locked, and the formula, it's going to be the same thing here on this one. It wants to go down, but we locked the row to 5. So we've said use column B, but it's not an absolute, but we did make the cell an absolute. So this cannot continue down, right? Because it must use that cell. And if we looked at one of these other ones, I'm going to press escape. You can see G10 times B5. The important thing is that particular cell on row 5 always stays the same. When in doubt, use an absolute reference. So if you're not absolutely sure, like over here we have an absolute reference, use that one. I'm going to press escape to exit that particular formula, and if I wanted to change this one, no problem, I could, but I'm going to leave it that way because many times when we're working through the book, there will be subtle changes that they'll want to make, and they may be having us do something later. So I'm going to leave that one the way it is, and it would definitely work. Okay? And I'm going to press save one more time. And this is a great place to take a 2-minute breather. So when we begin again, we're going to start back on page 503, which is Function Basics Part 2. So we're going to start entering some really cool functions into the spreadsheet and really make it something worthwhile. Now you can see we already have just by adding that bit of information. So here we have the cost of a home. We have a down payment of $80,000. We have the amount financed, $320,000. We have the interest rate, the rate per period, the number of years, and the number of payment periods. And this one's cool, the payoff year. All right, let's continue on page 503. We're going to enter some basic functions into our spreadsheet here. So if I scroll down, I can see I have a block of information here called Summary Statistics. And what we're going to do is we're going to add in the total, average, median, lowest, highest, and number of mortgages. And that's going to be really interesting because we're going to use functions to do all of these. So if I begin with letter B and I click on cell B16, what I want to do, I'm going to go over to the Formulas tab. Now you don't have to be on the Formulas tab to do this particular function. You can be on the Home tab, and many of these are available on the Home tab. So for starters, I have the AutoSum function here, and I can just click one time on AutoSum. But you notice that Excel's done a pretty bad job of selecting which cells we want to sum. So what we're going to do is click and hold the left mouse button, and I'm going to drag down, and I want to include all of the house cost numbers here. So there's 5. The sum will be cells B8, and the colon means through, so cells B8 through B12. All I have to do to enter that formula is click the checkbox here, or I can press enter on the keyboard. So now I now see that the house cost total is $1,521,000. So let's click on the average. We want to find out what the average cost of houses is with all of these different houses. So in this case, I am going to go to Formulas, and I'm going to click the drop down box for AutoSum here. And as it says here, average, I'm going to select the average. Now once again, Excel didn't do a very good job of selecting the range we want, so I'm going to go up here and I'm going to click the left mouse button and drag it down once again. And to save it, I'll just press enter. So the average house cost is $304,240 between all of these ones. Okay, the median basically means the middle, but if we go up here to AutoSum again, you'll see that median is not showing. Well, that's all right. We can click more functions, and up here it says type a brief description of what you want to do. I'm going to type in median, and then I'll click go. And it says select a function. So I'm going to select median. Well, actually it's already selected, so I'm just going to press OK. And notice again here it's saying, well, it looks like you want to use cell B17, but we don't, do we? We want to find out what the middle range is for all of these. So what I'm going to do is click and hold and select these cells, and you notice that the function arguments box minimized while we're working. And I'm holding the left mouse button down. I'm going to let go of the left mouse button, and it's now selected ranges B8 through B12. And here's a description of what the function does. Returns the median, or the number, or the number in the middle of the set of given numbers. So I'm going to press OK. So the middle number in all of these numbers, the middle of the row, this one being the highest, right? Looks like, we're going to find out in a second. That would be middle of the road. But we want to find out what the lowest is. In this case, if I go back up to AutoSum, I want to select min. Now notice that they do not use the word minimum here. They're using the word lowest because it's a little bit easier to understand than minimum. Although you really think that somebody who understands lowest should probably understand minimum too. So I'm going to grab the house cost. Remember, I'm holding the left mouse button down and dragging along these ones to select them. And I'll press enter. So the lowest is 175,500 of this group. We're going to do the same thing for highest. I'm going to click that drop down, and I'm going to select max. And again, I have to select this range here, and then I will press enter, or I can click this checkbox right here. Now, number of mortgages, how would we figure that out? Well, we could just count it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, well, we've got 5 mortgages there. So we could just say, yeah, that's good enough. We'll just put in the number of 5. But what happens when this spreadsheet changes and then we add more and more mortgages? Well, we don't want to have to manually update this number every single time, do we? I don't think we do. So in this case, I'm going to click on the cell where I want the formula to go, which is B21. And I'm on step D on page 506 right now. And I'm going to go back up to the AutoSum and I'm going to click that drop down arrow and I'm going to select count numbers. Again, it didn't get the range right, so I'm going to select the range that I want and then I'm going to press enter. And it gives me the number of mortgages as 5. So I'm going to save, and now we've got some information here. But what we'd like to do is actually copy it over to the down payment and the amount financed. Now we have the amount financed here and we have the down payment here, and notice it's no coincidence that the house cost here lines up with the house cost here and the down payment lines up with the down payment here. In other words, these are in the same column, aren't they? Same for the amount financed. So because of that, if I select B16 through B21, I can use the fill handle and drag it 2 columns over and release. And all those numbers for the down payment and the amount financed are filled in. And I'm going to click the save button. So now basically if you look at one of these cells, you can see that the formula is filled in and it's using the correct cell structure. So if you go into a meeting and somebody says, what is the average payment, down payment that individuals or a couple was giving us for a home? Well, the average was $58,600 as a down payment. What was the lowest amount financed? The lowest amount financed was $145,500. And of course this one, number of all mortgages, is going to be consistent, okay? And we've already hit save. So there's one last thing we're going to do on this particular section. We want to use today's date here. We could enter the date, but what's the problem with entering the date? Well, if we enter the date and we open the spreadsheet a year later, the date will not change. Why is that important? Well, let's say we open the spreadsheet for the sake of making changes to this particular spreadsheet. Well, the thing about that is the date wouldn't change, and we want the date to change along with the spreadsheet every time it's open. So if I click that particular cell, B4, I can go up to date and time and click that drop down arrow. And I think what I'm going to do is add the date and time value of today. And it'll say returns the current date formatted as a date. The function has no arguments. And I will press OK. So now I have the most recent date. And the next time I open this sheet, it will change to whatever day it happens to be. Of course, I want to save my changes, so I'm going to press save once again. And we're going to take a little break, just a little breather here for 1 or 2 minutes and let everybody get caught up. And when we come back, we're going to start on page 516, which is hands-on exercises number 3. Alright, before I continue on, you may have noticed that I had an error here in the payoff year. So I've lost the formula, it got replaced with the letter S. And what can I do about that? Well, I have the formula right here below that particular cell, don't I? So I can actually use the fill handle and go up 1 cell and release. and it will automatically fill in that formula for me again. Remember, it always uses the cells that are for the particular formula row, right? So here we have year equals J9 plus G9, and if I click up, we have year equals year J8 plus G8. So it automatically changed the row identifier for me. So just in case you ever have to make a fix, that's an easy way to do it using the fill handle. Alright, so we've completed everything on the Details tab, and for Part 3 in Chapter 2 on page 516, we're going to start doing work on the Payment Info tab. So the first thing we want to do is figure out the annual percentage rate, or the APR. So in order to do that, we're going to have to enter a new formula, but actually we're going to use a function. So I'm going to click on cell G9, and I'm going to go to the Formulas tab. Now I'm already on there. Normally we're on the Home tab, but in this case I want to change to the Formulas tab. And then we're going to go to the Lookup and Reference. I'm going to go to the very bottom and select VLOOKUP. I'm going to enter cell F9 in the lookup value. Now, of course, if I just click on it, F9, it'll actually add it to the lookup value. Then we're going to go to Table Array. So basically what we're doing here is we're creating sort of a miniature database so that whenever we want to look up the 25-year rate, we can use a table of information to look for the proper year and then use the corresponding annual percentage rate. So what we're going to do here for the table array is we're going to select, starting from the number 15, D4 through E6. And you can see that it's now got that table array information selected. Now before I leave here, I'm going to press F4, and I'm going to make the table array an absolute reference. And I'm going to tab to column index number, and I'm going to put in 2 for the second column. And for the range lookup, I'm going to type in false. Okay, let's click OK and see what happens. Alright, so our APR shows up as 3.625, which is the correct rate for 25 years. Let's go ahead and use the fill handle, and I'm just going to drag down with the fill handle and fill in our APR for the corresponding mortgages. After I do that, I'm going to press save. Okay, so we're going to go on to page 518 in our book. We're going to use the payment function to determine the monthly payment. First thing I'm going to do is click cell H9 because that's where I want to start making that formula. Then I'm going to click Financial here, making sure, of course, once again, I'm in the Formulas tab. In this case, I need to scroll down a little ways until I see Payment. Okay, so I've got the function arguments here. In the rate box, we're going to put in G9 divided by B5. So let's check out what those cells do. G9 is the APR, and it's going to be divided by B5, which is the number of payments per year. Now I'm going to take that off of my formula because I don't want that part on there. In the NPER field, oh, my mistake. Before I move on from here, I want to use F4 to make sure that that particular cell is absolute. So we want B5 to be absolute, just like we did before, but not this one, because this one needs to change according to whichever row that information is coming from. Okay, in the NPER box, we're going to put F9 multiplied by $B, $5. Whoops, 5. F9, which is the number of years, multiplied by the number of payments per year. PV indicates the present value of $1. And here we're going to type in D minus D9. Okay? And here it'll tell you what these fields mean. PV is the present value, the total amount that a series of future payments is worth right now. We can click on NPER, is the total number of payments for the loan. Okay, so we've got PV in there. We do get an estimate here of a payment of $1,723.73. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And there's our result. And I can fill in the rest of these cells by double-clicking and adding in the amounts automatically. You can see why the fill handle is so critical. We've done basically throughout both of these sheets at least half of the cells with the fill handle. All right, now this next one's a little bit tricky, but just as important. We want to figure out whether or not this loan that we're going to give needs to have PMI insurance. And what PMI insurance essentially is it is insurance that protects the mortgaging company, the one that is giving the loan, in the event that the person who's borrowing the money defaults on their loan. Now, if you put more than 20% down for your initial down payment, you do not need PMI insurance. However, if you don't, then you do have to have PMI insurance. So let's figure out if we can create a formula that will tell us whether or not we need PMI insurance. So I'm going to click cell I9, make sure I'm in the correct cell. And I'm going to go up here on the Formulas tab to Logical Operators and select If. And you can probably guess what if does. It says if E9 is greater than $B, $7. So what's in B7? If it's greater than the down payment rate, then if we find that argument to be true, charge nothing. On the other hand, if we find that argument to be false and they did not put down 20% payment, then we're going to have to put something else in. D9 multiplied by $B, $6, so it's an absolute cell reference, divided by $B, $5. D9, let's check that out. So here's D9. So that's the amount financed multiplied by the PMI interest rate divided by the number of payments. So it's going to give us an interest, or rather a PMI payment rate here that the person would have to pay if they don't have 20%. So again, we're using the if function. If E9 is greater than the B7 cell, and we find that that argument is true, we're not going to charge them anything. But if it isn't, we're going to multiply their total amount financed by the PMI rate divided by the number of payments per year. And I'll click OK. Dashes indicate 0. So if you ever see a dash in a spreadsheet that's for accounting purposes, the dash indicates a 0. So let's go ahead and do the fill handle all the way down. And we can see that the next one in line, row 10, they actually did pay over 20% down, so they do not have to pay PMI. This one, however, they only paid 14.6% as a down payment. So according to our calculations, they do have to pay $55.58 for that monthly PMI insurance. And of course, here we have another one. And last, this one pays nothing. And I'm going to click Save. Okay, the last thing I want to do, I'm going to go to the Home tab. I take that back. I'm going to go to Page Layout. And I'm going to click the little call out button that'll show us Page Setup. I want to fit this particular sheet to one page. So I'm going to click Fit to 1 pages wide by 1 pages tall. Then I'm going to cruise over to Margins, and I'm going to horizontally center everything in the center of the page. Then I'm going to click Header and Footer. I'm going to go down here to Footer, and I think I'll select Custom Footer. For the left section, I'm going to type in my name. Then I'm going to click in the center section. And according to our instructions on page 520, letter G, it says use the code for a spreadsheet. Now that's file name. How about this one? Insert sheet name. And they want the file name on the right. So I'll click over here in the right section and insert the file name. I'll click OK and click OK again. Now, if I go to File and do Print, I get a nice print preview here showing all the information. So we've got the whole sheet is on one page and it's centered horizontally. Down below we have on the footer our name, the name of the tab, and the name of the spreadsheet. I'm going to click back. Save the document one more time. Now make sure that if you are on campus you save this document to the H drive. Otherwise you can save it on your local system. The very last step is to upload this document and the previous document we worked on in parts 1 and 2 to Blackboard under the Excel 1 tutorial. This concludes the Excel 1 tutorial. So we went through quite a few steps. Hopefully you've got a better understanding now of Excel, some of the formulas that you can use, some of the functions you can use, and some ways to format the spreadsheet to make it look more attractive. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.